What is up, everybody? Welcome to Destination the Show. Almost got the name for our podcast there. Destination the Show, episode 61. It is Wednesday, December 11th. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, can you speak? Because last week was a little rough. How are you feeling,
Yeah,
buddy?
I'm at like 90% right now as far as
Okay.
my voice goes. I'm still coughing, um, but I have worked every day since we last recorded. So we're on the mend for sure. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It is cold here in the Midwest. Very, very cold at the moment. Doing well in the sprint to winter break in the education world. You know how that goes.
Mhm.
But yeah, doing well overall. No complaints. I guess we can call this episode, Jeremy, the disappointing draft lottery edition.
Sure.
Um, we'll get to that. Dude, I gotta say, what hasn't been disappointing? I feel like you're maybe gonna tease me for this because I am a notorious grump about the MLB offseason, always complaining about how boring it is. I feel like this offseason has been incredibly fun. And since we last spoke when we did our draft lottery preview episode, it's been nonstop exciting things happening. Kind of excited to chop up some free agent signings, some trades, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, really, it boils down to the last handful of years. Scott Boras has slow played his guys, and
Yeah.
so everything's a crawl until the end. And after he kind of got burned, and well, I think his clients got burned,
Yeah.
and then found new agents, that he was like, shoot, this didn't really work for me. So now when the top guys start coming off the board, then the next guys can fly off the board. So I do enjoy the winter meetings when there's actual activity,
Yep.
and we've gotten that. So that has been a pleasant surprise, because I warn you every year, man, don't look forward to December and January, because nothing's going to happen. And this year there's actually been things happening, which has been fun.
Yeah, this has been fun. And so, what we're going to do is we'll break down some of the major moves, including stuff that happened today with the Red Sox and White Sox striking a fairly large trade. We'll finish out our news and notes with some Cubs, Brewers, Twins content or lack thereof, depending on the team. And then we'll jump in some draft lottery review. We'll do some notes on this draft class, although I got to say, I'm less excited for that section given how Tuesday evening went, and we'll finish up with some fun questions that we got for this week. So let's run down some of these big deals, Jeremy, and we'll get your take on some of these. The biggest one we got to talk about since last week: Juan Soto signed with the Mets. $765 million, none of which is deferred. Your reaction to that absolutely eye-watering free agent contract that he
Isn't
signed?
it crazy? Like, isn't it just absolutely absurd? He's going to make on average 51 million a year, which means even when he's not playing baseball, he's making $140,000 a day, which means he makes almost $6,000 an hour, right?
Good work
If
if
my
you can
math
get it.
if my math is right, it's $100 a minute,
That's
which
insane.
means he could stand at a vending machine and buy a soda, a bottle of soda every second for the next 15 years, and still have money. Like, that's, but you know what? I'd rather he has the money than the owners.
It's 100%, absolutely wild. I agree with you. Like, I feel like we expected this deal to be like in the north of 700 million range, and it still feels just absolutely enormous. Any strong feelings about the fact that he went to the Mets over the Yankees? It seems like those were the final two horses in the race. Did you have any skin in the game in terms of keeping Soto out the AL, him not going to the Yankees? Did you care about any of that, or just
Um, so
just curiosity?
I'm anti-Yankee,
Yeah.
um, and I'm not totally like anti-Dodger yet, but I'm gonna get there,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Um, I'm not anti-Met at all. In fact, we went to not Shea Stadium, City Field, and watched a game this year, and actually I really enjoyed it, and so we have some like
You sent me
souvenir
great pictures from the stadium.
Yeah, we have some souvenir glasses. We got the Big Apple like ice cream thing. It was a ton of fun. And being there, like even my kids when they watched the playoffs this year, it was like, oh yeah, the Mets. Like,
Yep.
so I'm glad that we bought tickets and went and saw it before they're going to have to inevitably raise prices to pay for a $765 million contract. But good for him. And I mean, it's like we talked about last week. This isn't like wealth for a few generations. This is more money than you could ever possibly know what to do with.
Yep.
And good on the guy for, being good at swinging a bat and chasing the ball down. And as a younger person, I was like, man, that's a lot of money to get for playing a game. But if the money's being made, I would much rather it be the product that's making the money, right? Than the billionaire owner
100%.
that is making money off of someone else's hard work. So good for Juan Soto. I will never ever have any ill feelings towards someone making a boatload of money playing a kid's game. And so, yeah, I mean, rather the Mets and the Yankees, I hate the Yankees. And I don't have that hatred for the Mets. And you know what? The Mets like to play base. Like Francisco Lindor, he's just fun playing baseball. Juan Soto has fun playing baseball.
Yep. I agree.
So good for them. And will I watch the Mets play? Probably not. But better the Mets than the Yankees. And you know what? Screw the Yankees. And this feels better that he stayed in town and just chose the other team.
I know. That's great. So how did the Yankees pivot, Jeremy? Well, they started pretty immediately afterwards, signing one of the top pitchers on the market, Max Fried, formerly of the Atlanta Braves, 8 years, $218 million, 27.25 for Fried per year. That puts him at the top or close to the top of the Yankees rotation, along with Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon. Also noteworthy, perhaps, that the Yankees traded for additional international bonus pool money this evening from the Red Sox. I believe that number is only $250,000, and they're still plenty short of a lot of other teams. But your thoughts on the Fried deal to the Yankees? It is awfully long.
See, that's the issue. I'm not gonna ever blink twice at a guy at paying a pitcher $27.5 million a year. Like that's a ton of money. But for a potentially top end starter, that's not crazy money. 8 years, whew. Like the shelf life on a pitcher, like if you sign a guy for 8 years, if you have a pitcher for 8 years, the likelihood that he didn't miss a whole year of one of those 8 with an arm thing,
Yep.
right? I mean that's almost bound to happen. So if he makes it years, great. But I mean, you're probably looking at 5 healthy years, maybe 6. But at 27.5, like that to me seems like a long deal. But that also tells me that there was teams willing to go 6 and 7, and the Yankees were like, well, then we'll go 8 just to get him. I don't know. I mean, it's by making this swap, right? They save some money not signing Soto, but they're not better, right? They take a step back.
100%.
And I would guess they still have money to spend. So the international thing, that was new to me. I did not know that. Is there belief that Sasaki wants to be a Yankee? Because I've heard the opposite. I've heard like small market.
Yeah, I don't think so. I just thought it was interesting, given that he was posted just a couple of days ago, and we'll come on to him at the end. I want to actually scoot over to the Central divisions now and talk about the Guardians, because the Guardians are in an interesting position. I think a little bit similar to the Twins, possibly a little bit similar to the Mariners. And there's quite a few teams in this boat that fall under the category of revenue uncertain teams, or that's how they might deem themselves, right? Teams with a changing or shifting TV situation who are trying to shed payroll before they do any meaningful additions or roster construction this offseason. So the Guardians made a series of trades the other night, trading away Andres Jimenez to the Toronto Blue Jays for Spencer Horowitz before flipping Horowitz to the Pirates for prospects Luis Ortiz, Josh Hartle, who was an early draft favorite from 2024, and Michael Kennedy. So this frees up a ton of money for the Guardians. Jimenez, elite defensively, I think was a 3-WAR player last year, but the bat seems like it's falling off significantly. How do you feel, Jeremy, about what the Guardians did? Do you like the Jimenez acquisition for the Blue Jays? What are your thoughts on this series of deals that the Guardians made here?
So I feel like the Guardians usually make deals that are good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they acquire a handful of pitchers that seem to be like decent upside guys, the likelihood there's more likelihood that they're going to hit than the average team. So
Agreed.
Is it necessarily a guarantee? No. Do they give up a really good player? Sure. And I'm not really sure how Jimenez fits in Toronto. I feel like they have a bunch of infielders. So are they moving off those guys? Are they like what's their plan?
I sure wish I could tell you, and I feel like I have no idea, right? To me, Toronto, there's like an AL team like this and an NL team like this. The AL team is the Blue Jays and the NL team is the Giants, where they're desperate to spend money and run side by side with the deep pocketed teams, but they really have a hard time making the sales pitch over other large market teams like the Yankees or the Dodgers or whoever the case may be. And Jimenez, I just, the Blue Jays organization, I guess, Jeremy, I'm just not really sure like what the vision is here. Like Vladdy is a free agent after this year. There was talk of trading away Bo Bichette. Their farm system is not good at all. They do not have a ton of interesting help on the way. And so it seems like they're trying to contribute now pieces. They're struggling to do that in free agency, and they don't necessarily have the assets to do that leveraging their farm system. So I'm not really sure what the plan is. I don't see a great fit for Jimenez. I don't know if I would feel super confident that Toronto is the team to get his bat back on track with new Major League hitting coach David Hopkins, by the way. So I'm not really sure if I love this for the Blue Jays. And the Guardians clearly had a plan in acquiring Horowitz and had guys that they were interested in picking up from the Pirates at the time. And so, yeah, I can't claim to have a good sense of what the Blue Jays end game is here, really.
No, but I think the important part, at least as a Twins fan, is the Guardians have a plan, and it's to accumulate arms.
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out the rest of the stuff and win the Central. Like that's just kind of how they do it.
Yep. So we'll see. I'll be interested to see what else is coming for the Guardians this offseason. A lot of speculation about them moving Josh Naylor potentially, who's getting more expensive, but a large amount of money off the books there. Then, Jeremy, the big trade of the day. This one deserves a little airtime here. The Red Sox traded for Garrett Crochet from the White Sox, giving up Kyle Teal, who we spoke about extensively ahead of the 2023 draft, and went to the Red Sox in an absolutely loaded draft class. Braden Montgomery, who was one of our favorite bets from the 2024 class. Chase Mydroth and Wilkerman Gonzalez. I have seen very split reaction on this trade. Just in the general online reaction, Crochet's coming with 2 years of team control, coming off a 4-win season for the White Sox. What's your overall take on the value and who did well here?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we got a pretty decent view of a train wreck that was the Chicago White Sox last year.
Sure did.
And their lone bright spot was Garrett Crochet.
Mm-hmm.
And having him for 2 more years really didn't provide any value for the franchise because they were going to be god awful anyway. Mm-hmm. And so making a deal made sense for them. The Red Sox are competing for now, and they're going to get a guy that I'm less sold on than I think a lot of people are. He had a great year, but we've seen pitchers have one great year and then turn back into a pumpkin. And so the Red Sox are going to add a guy to the front of the rotation. So I don't hate the deal for the Red Sox. They didn't give up major league talent, and they're going to get better in the major leagues this year. The White Sox, who didn't necessarily need major league talent, or obviously they need major league talent, but they're not in a position to compete for the Central, turned around and got really good prospects. And I think Kyle Teal's the highest rated prospect. Braden Montgomery is my favorite guy in that deal. As soon as it happened, I text you, and your response was, yeah, but the White Sox don't develop players. And that's not wrong. But when you can put more talented players in there, the hit rate could potentially, you just got to hit on 1 of 4, right? As opposed to hitting on less talented dudes. So, I mean, I think it was a good deal for both. I think it was an overpay by the Red Sox personally. But if Crochet is able to, for the next 2 years, lead this team further, what does Casey Stern say, right? Prospects are cool, parades are cooler. Yep. And if he can, if the Red Sox can do that, you're not going to fret about giving up a handful of guys. But I do really like the return for the White Sox.
I kind of do, but I actually think it's a little bit of an underpay by the Red Sox from what the White Sox could have gotten. It's just my thought and my opinion. And let me talk a little bit about why. And your comment, right? Prospects are cool, parades are cooler. 100% agree. The Red Sox have so far to go in their roster build to get to the level that the Yankees and Orioles are operating on, even in that division, let alone competing for World Series. And so I don't say that as a criticism. Like, it's good that you're making moves, more as an anticipation that more should be coming for the Red Sox. I hope they continue to be aggressive. One thing they've got to be happy about is they preserve their top 3 prospects. Christian Campbell, Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, all staying with the organization. That's exciting. I think a lot of folks and reactions I saw got sucked into the fact that the Red Sox got 2 global top 100 prospects back for Crochet, which is great. We talked last week about how we haven't seen a ton of top 100 prospects moved recently, and that was one of the things that was kind of sorely missing from last year's winter meetings. I love Teal, but I'm looking at a list of the White Sox top prospects, and none of these guys feels like a slam dunk regular to me. Right? They've got Noah Schultz, big lanky lefty with nasty stuff, had some health issues. Kyle Teal's number 2, Hagen Smith, they just drafted number 3, Colson Montgomery, been a top 100 guy for a while, had pretty uneven performance in 2024. Braden Montgomery broke his ankle prior to the draft, probably one of the reasons that he fell down to the Red Sox at 12 or wherever it was. He hasn't even seen a pitch of professional baseball yet. And so I like Montgomery too, and I do think he has star power, although I think personally his hit tool is a little bit fringy, but you got back a bat first catcher that's not like an elite prospect in Teal, who I don't love, and then Montgomery, who's never seen a pitch in professional baseball. And maybe that'll work out great for the White Sox. I just have a hard time thinking that there wasn't an organization who couldn't have done a little better for them.
See, and that's where I mean, I'm looking at the same list you're looking at. The top 8 prospects that they list on MLB.com now for the White Sox are 21 and 22 years old.
Sure.
Number 9 is 18. Number 12 is 19. And then Gonzalez, 22. He's the 14th. So 14, 15, 16 are all 22. And then 17 through 20 are all 20. So, I mean, you've got a window, which the window for the White Sox is not open now.
It's like 2026, 27 is when it starts, maybe.
Okay, so that we're talking 3 to 4 years when all of these prospects are now 24, 25, 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is a very appealing place to potentially be. I would much rather be in that position than in 26, 27, you take 4 of those prospects off that list and you get that one comp pick for Garrett Crochet because he
Mm-hmm.
ain't signing and
No,
his
he's
value
not.
is never going to be higher. And so I don't I don't disagree with your point that maybe a team could have done better, but you led this with, we talk about how top 100 prospects aren't getting traded. They got
Mm-hmm.
2. So
Yep.
you're probably not going to find a team that you're going to get that. And why'd you get it? Because of the questions that you raised, right? Braden Montgomery, he had a broken leg, but if he doesn't break his ankle, he goes top 3 or 4.
Yeah, agreed. 100%
And
agreed with
Kyle
that.
Teal, listen, I don't love Kyle Teal either, but they got another catcher that's also 21 years old that's rated 6th overall in their prospects. So now you've just
Mm-hmm.
doubled up the ability to maybe hit with a high upside.
Yeah, right on. Your dog agrees. So let me ask you this, Jeremy. One more thing I want to cover on this Red Sox White Sox trade, and then we'll do a couple more offseason moves here, and then move on. Because I've come to a more clear thought about this, and I want to get your take too. Crochet is a converted reliever, right? Made the transition to starting and has now netted the White Sox a valuable haul of talent. Does he change your calculus on Griffin Jacks possibly moving to the rotation for the Minnesota Twins? Does Crochet's success make that any more appealing for you? Forget about him being traded or whatever, different situations with a different team, but seeing the success with which that transition happened and the value that the White Sox have accrued from that, does that make that appeal to you any more than it did when we chatted about it last week?
So how old is Griffin Jacks?
30.
Okay. So Garrett Crochet debuted as a reliever in 2020 at 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And was a reliever in 2021 at 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it was injured the rest of that year, all 2022, came back and threw 12 innings in 2023 before becoming a full-time starter again, which is what he was going to be, right? At the age of 24, 25, whatever
He's
he is
25 now. Yep.
And so to me, it's apples and pick a vegetable. It's not even like a comparison. There's more value in starters, right? I think that, if you have a high end guy and you can pitch every 5 days and you have an opportunity to win every 5 days, there's huge value in that. Griffin Jacks is only valuable when the Twins are winning, right? And that's kind of the reliever thing. If you want to give him a shot as a starter, maybe.
So
this trade doesn't do anything for me as far as now we should.
Fair enough. No.
No.
But here's my thought that I want to get your reaction to. Then let me put it to you this way. I feel like a lot of the should Griffin Jacks go to the rotation discourse has been kind of predicated on an assumption that Griffin Jacks would be like a 3-4, like a third or a middle of the rotation starter. The conclusion that I've come to, which may be completely wrong, I'm wrong about lots of things, is that the Twins actually would not move Griffin Jacks to the rotation unless they feel like he can do a lot better than being a 3-4 guy. Unless they feel like he is someone that can crack the top 3 of their rotation. And I think that's hard for us to imagine, right? Because we tend to lean on, what do we know? We know Griffin Jacks coming in and being absolutely ridiculous and putting out fires, and you can throw him against any hitter in the league and he'll strike him out. We don't. It's hard for us to kind of imagine the possibilities. We just think, he's going to move to the rotation. Velocity is going to dip. The command's not going to be as good. The stuff's not going to be as tough to face, all that good stuff. But I'm beginning to think that if the Twins do this, it's because they think he could be better than number 3 in their rotation. What do you think?
If you could, I mean, you can't guarantee me, but if it's like he slides in behind Pablo, I say do it.
100%.
I don't think he does. Right? I think you have Pablo, Ober, Ryan, and then Jax would be in that next, right? He's a 4. I don't think he's better than Joe Ryan as a starter, and that's why I don't move him. If you tell me he's going to be better than Bailey Ober as a starter, then 100% move him, and then let's readjust this whole pecking order of starting pitchers, because we can move a couple of them
Mm-hmm.
to the bullpen. I do think Griffin Jax as a starter, based on his background, would be very durable.
Yep.
Like I would be. I shouldn't say shocked, because he's a pitcher and pitchers miss starts and he hasn't been a starter. But if the dude made 32, if he gets moved to a starter and makes 32 starts next year, that would surprise me zero.
Yep.
But I'm not on board with it.
Okay. We'll see how things pan out in spring. Excited to keep chatting about that possibility. A couple of ones we'll hit quickly for the sake of time. Giants signed Willy Adames, 7 years, $182 million. That nets the Brewers a comp pick immediately after the PPI picks, because he signed for a sum in excess of $50 million. Jeremy, quickly, is that a little more than you thought Adames might get?
Yeah.
Because it was for me.
But then the Giants do things, and you're just like,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, it's the Giants.
They're the Blue Jays of the NL, desperate to spend their money.
Right. There are some other teams that do things like that too. The Rockies, the Royals, the A's.
Yep.
Right. The A's with Severino. That was a little like, wow.
Well, that certainly seems like the A's they're going to have a grievance filed against them if they don't spend a little more money, which is kind of sad. Roki Sasaki's been posted. We talked about him. So here's a fun question on Roki that you get. It's a 1-word answer. Name his most likely destination that is not one of the powerhouse luxury tax teams. So I'm taking the Mets, the Yankees, and the Dodgers off the board for you. You get one answer. What's his most likely destination?
Seattle.
God, took mine.
Okay, let's rewind that. Let me come up with another one.
No, you're good. Go with that. Why Seattle, Jeremy?
I think there's just the pull of the location. I think the West Coast is the most likely place when you're a Japanese guy to come. I do think that there's a pull, the Ichiro pull. I do think that's real, and based on the small market, that he maybe is more comfortable not in the bright lights.
Yep.
I feel like Seattle just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Moving west to east, like I feel like San Diego is not the right fit, right? The LA's, even though the Angels are going to always live in the shadows of the Dodgers, that doesn't make sense. Does a team like Houston make sense?
Maybe.
Probably, because I mean you're going to spend your time playing on the West Coast.
Texas Rangers.
The Rangers, I think, makes sense. I don't think there's any chance that he signs with whatever we're calling the team that was formerly the Oakland A's. But then, I mean, I think once you get away from the coast, would a team like the Cardinals make sense? Like if you're going to come inland, that's kind of the big little market, right? Or the little big market. A team like St. Louis, a team like Cleveland, right?
Scary.
I think there's options there, but when I saw that he was not like real big on the bright lights, I'm guessing there's a lot of teams that were like,
yeah, that's so exciting. Yeah.
Right? And I think that would be a lot of fun, and he's going to be a stud. Like, I think he's going to be really, really, really good. Like when at the end of the day, when we start stacking up Japanese pitchers that pitch in the major leagues, I think Sasaki's going to be right up there with the greatest that have ever done it. But it's going to be a very interesting next handful of days, because teams will be trying to max out their bonus pool. and other teams that don't have a chance will be looking to get rid of their money, while there are other teams that are going to be trying to pick up the scraps because some team is going to leave a lot of players completely in the lurch.
They are. That is going to be interesting, and we are going to cover international signings we're closer to when the window opens, even though who's signing with what organization is like the worst kept secret imaginable. We'll absolutely dig into that and the fallout from the Sasaki signing. Brewers and Twins continue to do nothing, which is very sad. We will dig into Rule 5 picks next week. The Cubs continue to prioritize run prevention, apparently nearing a deal with Carson Kelly. Also, the hot rumor at the moment, Jeremy, is the Cubs are the favorites to land one Kyle Tucker if the Astros decide to deal him. Apparently, the asking price for Kyle Tucker is Seiya Suzuki, Isaac Paredes, and one of Cam Smith or Matt Shaw for 1 year of Kyle Tucker.
That's too much.
So
too
much.
It's too much.
So much.
But do the Cubs then turn around and give him a bunch of money to stick around?
But
and if they don't, they're going to get a high draft pick. Right?
But if you're Kyle Tucker and you just saw Juan Soto got $765 million, not saying you're going to land a contract that large, but don't you want to at least see how that plays out and get to free agency next year?
Yes, all players should just hit free agency unless they're offered $1 billion for their first 6 years.
Okay, dude. So, see, we covered 30 minutes on trades and free agent signings. How fun is that? It's been a fast-paced offseason. All right, let's dig into the draft lottery. I've been procrastinating and delaying talking about the draft lottery. Here's how we'll do this. We'll talk through some winners, and then we'll talk through the biggest losers. And then, because there are a couple of big losers. And then we will dig into the teams that we cover the most here. And the way we'll talk about this from the jump is, what do they have in the top 35 or so picks in terms of number of picks, and what is the location of those picks, and how much money does that afford that particular team? And then we might jump into some highlights of the first round talent in this draft class. So the biggest winner, Jeremy, of the 2025 draft lottery are the Seattle Mariners, who had the 17th best chance to land the number 1 pick, and they jumped up all the way to 3rd, projected to add between $5 and $6 million to their bonus pool, which is like trajectory altering potentially for a franchise if you don't have a good farm system, and they do have a good farm system. So I'm going to ask you the question again. Do you like this? Because I feel like teams that need it less have benefited so much more than teams that are terrible from the draft lottery so far. Like, we've seen a massive jump every single season.
Yeah, I do like that it's happening, because it's really minimizing the reward for being horrible.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's what, I guess the trade-off is, it makes the trade deadline a little less fun, because teams are like, well, we trade all our guys and lose. It's not really helping us.
Yep.
But I do like it, because teams that compete still get a shot. And this next draft doesn't really have that number 1 generational, definitely going to go number, but there's going to be that in the future.
Yep.
And teams aren't just going to be like, well, let's stop. Who's the guy in 2026?
I think just the 2026 class in general is going to be much more akin to 2023 than 24 and 25.
So, but I do like it, because it's like, yep, we can be rewarded for competing and make it. I think the Mariners have a 0.5% chance of jumping up to number 1.
Yeah.
So 1 in 200 shot, and they almost did it. So yep. I really do like it. And the thing with baseball, less so than basketball, jumping up from 17 to 3, like you said, changes the trajectory, but it's not franchise altering, right? Very rarely.
Sure.
I think Bryce Harper, probably franchise altering.
Yep.
beyond that, though, I mean, even Strasburg, that was a trajectory changing thing.
Yep.
But with the injuries, that didn't necessarily,
Yep.
alter that franchise. So I do like that in baseball because you're not going to add one guy. I mean, we watched a team for the last half dozen years have two of the greatest baseball players of all time on the same team,
Yep.
and they were god awful, right? So I like it. It's fun, and I think it's even though you hated the presentation, it's fun
Oh
to
my
watch
God.
when the Mariners were like, oh, their card didn't show up. How
Yeah.
high are they going to jump?
It was
And
marginally better because it was marginally slower, but also I think you didn't get a chance to watch the. Did you actually get to watch the show?
I had it on. I was at a basketball game. There was no volume.
Okay, so they had a rep for every MLB team, including Jim Tomei
Yeah, I
representing
saw.
the White Sox, who
I
weren't
did see
even
that.
eligible for the lottery. And I
Yeah.
think they didn't have like the sound situation right, so those guys that were being introduced couldn't hear when the show was saying, and here representing the Minnesota Twins is LaTroy Hawkins. They were just kind of like goofily staring out into like a heavily floodlit stage. So it made for a very confusing look.
Yeah.
Other big,
When there was no audio, I thought it was great.
yeah, there you go. That says a lot. Other big winners were the Cardinals, who moved from the 13th best odds all the way up to 5th. They got a lottery pick. I think the biggest loser has to be the Miami Marlins. They entered the night tied with the best odds and the number 1 overall pick, and they slid all the way to 7th. That is absolutely brutal. The Rockies moved down fairly significantly. The Blue Jays also moved out of a lottery spot from 5th to 8th. And then, Jeremy, the teams that we cover, the Red Sox, Cubs, and Twins, all moved down. Every single one of them moved down. And we talked last week that there's basically like a 33% chance, roughly, that one of those 3 teams moved up into a top 6 spot. They all moved down. The Red Sox will be picking 15th. The Twins will be picking 16th. And the Cubs will be picking 17th in 2025. How disappointing is that, man?
So the draft lottery writers. Did you ever see the Friends episode where Joey basically says that he writes his own lines, and then they like show the writer in the room, and he's like writes his own lines, huh? And then they kill him off. So that's you in the draft lottery talking about the presentation being horrible.
Yeah,
And then the draft lottery writers are in the back lines are like, presentation's horrible, huh? We're gonna drop all the teams down. And that's what they did. Just to spite you,
I see.
they moved all of your teams down in the order.
So,
I do want to add, though, that I picked the Pirates to win the lottery. They did
You
not
did.
win the lottery, but they did move up to, I believe, number 6. So it's disappointing. Like when I saw the Twins card, I was like, dang.
Yeah.
But I mean, you painted the picture where that was more likely to happen than move up.
100%.
So
So we had said an 88% chance if you combine the odds of them either staying at 14, it was 66%, moving down was 22%, only a 12% chance of them jumping into a top 6 spot. But here's the thing I want to mention before we quickly jump into these bonus pools. 2026 is, I think, going to be a really, really strong draft. And the way that this lottery has shaken out, we know some of the rules about who is eligible and ineligible, right? So we covered this last week. Any payer team is ineligible for the lottery 2 years in a row. Any revenue receiving team is ineligible for the lottery 3 years in a row. Because of how the lottery shakes out, there are going to be 4 teams in 2026, Jeremy, that cannot pick inside the top 10. 4.
Tell me
which is super interesting to me. So the Nationals, they got the number 1 pick this year. They're ineligible for a top 10 pick.
Okay, and they'll probably be bad this year.
And they'll probably be bad this year. The Angels will be ineligible for a top 10 pick.
They're bad every year.
The Colorado Rockies will be ineligible for a top 10 pick.
Also bad every year.
And the St. Louis Cardinals, who will be fine. They'll be better. But I was just glancing at that, and I was like, wow, you could have, say, the Rockies picking at 10, the Angels picking at 11, and the Nationals picking at 12 locked in. And so the likelihood of teams jumping up and moving around in the 2026 draft lottery feels like it's going to be high.
Yeah, that's crazy. And no one said that yet on Twitter that I've seen. So
heard it here first.
Just breaking news.
Okay, so let's talk about the teams that we cover. We are now folding the Red Sox into that, Jeremy. We're just welcoming teams to draft coverage with open arms. We will have some stuff up in the new year at Talk Sox, video content, other draft stuff. So let's quickly walk through what teams are looking like in the top 35, and you're going to tell me who's best positioned and who you're excited about. The Red Sox are picking 15th. They moved down. That pick in 2024 was worth about $4.8 million. They do not have any other picks in the top 35 because they don't get a comp pick. The Twins pick 16th. And they also have 33. That's their comp A pick. So combined between those two, they have about $6.4 million despite moving down.
Are you adding those two numbers together? Because I feel like your math isn't mathing.
$7.4 million. My man. $7.4 million. I should also note, you guys, that this is based on the 2024 draft slots. They're going to increase by about 10%, but this is just to keep things consistent, right?
So you didn't do the addition.
I didn't do the addition. Okay. These are just like the rote 2024 numbers. So $7.4 million because I cannot do basic addition. With 2 picks in the top 35, the Cubs picking 17th, 4.5-ish. They also moved down. And then the Brewers, who weren't even in the draft lottery, Jeremy, will pick 20th. That's their first round pick. They will pick 29th. That is their compensation pick for Willy Adames. And they will pick 30th because they're picking first in Comp A. So they have 20, 29, and 30, which is going to be good for around $10 million. It's going to be closer to 11 when we factor in the 2025 slot increases. What's your reaction to the picks and the pools from what we've got on the board here?
I love that for the Brewers. Right? I mean, they're going to be able to kind of do what they want.
Whatever they want, dude.
Which is fun. And they have their second round pick, and they have the Levonis comp pick.
Yep.
They're getting Levonis this year.
The Brewers are going to have the Brewers are going to, despite picking 20th, are going to have like top 7, 8 bonus pool in this draft.
Yeah. I guess maybe not Levonis this year because he's probably not draft eligible if he's going to college. But they could, I mean, if he were to be eligible, they're going to be able to do what they want, which is super cool. I expect them to be relatively active this offseason too. Yeah. Comp picks can be traded, and it wouldn't shock me if there was some moving. I think every year it seems like there's some comp picks moved around. So, but if you ask me what of those 4 teams I would want to be, I would want to be the Brewers at 20.
100%. 100%. I mean, also the fact that you pick back-to-back at the end of that round. I think Seattle had that set up in 2023 where they had 3 picks at the end of the first round. That is just a beautiful situation to be in.
Now, could that change if there's some free agent signings? Could they end up with?
No, yes, it could change if they have some free agent signings. So there's potentially 3 more picks to fold in there that could push them back a little further. I think like Anthony Santander is one. A couple of other guys are going to sign larger free agent contracts with a qualifying offer attached. So we'll update this as we go. But like you say, Jeremy, just in terms of like the flexibility of picks and money and the Brewers' general creativity and how they approach the draft, feels like it's going to be really fun. Also, perhaps noteworthy that this draft is going to be, I think, well stocked with very interesting prep prospects, especially prep infielders. And I think it's going to make the back half of the first round really fun.
They're going to go like prep third baseman, junior college flamethrower. Like,
there you go.
Great job, Brewers. You do it all the time.
Yep. And then we were going to do an overview of like the talent at the top of the draft class, assuming that someone moved up, but nobody did. So I feel less eager and excited to talk about that now because I feel like anything I say about the 2025 class too early is going to make me look foolish in August, or in July, excuse me. But I think the prep class is good. It's better than 2024. I think there's a diverse group at the top, but you already mentioned this in this episode. No superstars. I don't think that 2025 at the very top of the draft is even going to be as good as 2024 at the top of the draft.
But preface that with Hagen Smith was like he'd probably be a first round pick, and then he comes out in his second game and strikes out like 100 batters.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's going to be
for sure
a handful of guys, a half dozen guys, a dozen guys that took a giant leap over the winter.
Yep.
I mean, think about Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens wasn't even he wasn't even a first round mention. He was transferred from Air Force to LSU, and all of a sudden Paul Skeens is
he was like a teens guy coming into that season. I
don't even think he was that high. I think he was a first round talk. But it was Dolander, right? And all of a sudden Skeens was just everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. You are absolutely right. There are guys that are going to pop. But all of that to say, we'll see. I'm really intrigued to see how the Ethan Holiday, we'll save this discussion for another episode, but I am intrigued to see how the Ethan Holiday discussion develops, because
who goes first?
I don't know. I don't know.
I would bet him versus the field right now.
That's insane. That's an insane thing to say. You would bet one guy versus the field in December before a draft in July is a wild thing to say, almost no matter who that person is.
Hey, well, when I'm right, you're going to be like, dang.
Maybe so. But Ethan Holiday, I think there's some questions about his profile that I think are fair to ask. Namely, Jeremy, like, he's not going to be a shortstop. He's going to be a third baseman, which is fine, but he also hasn't really played that well, right? And so, grain of salt, because I think the summer before his senior year, Jackson Holiday didn't necessarily play very well, and then just suddenly took this giant step forward and was like, oh my God, this guy's like potentially a generational prospect. And maybe Ethan Holiday does the same thing, but he's been running contact rates in summer ball of like 70%, and a little bit of concern from folks around like what the hit tool looks like. And it's certainly a different profile to Jackson, right? It's more like power over hit.
It's more like his father. Looks more like his dad.
100% he does.
Physical.
100.
Like at this point in time, and there's some other prospects. That Florida State pitcher I really like.
Jamie Arnold.
Yeah, I do. Despite he's got a funny first name. But I do think he's right-handed though, right?
He's a lefty.
Oh,
he's a two-pitch lefty.
Yeah.
At the moment.
So I do think that there are some. I mean, there's other guys that could certainly be the first overall pick, but I just think at Holiday, his brother was a number one prospect. His dad, like, you sold a guy short with a dad that was it just. I would be really surprised if it's the National or the Nationals, right?
The Nationals, who that's their type too, right? Is like loud, exciting tools, shoot for upside. Who was the guy they took when the Twins got Brooksley? Elijah Green. Remember him? Yeah. I remember you and I having a conversation about how intrigued we were about him as a prospect. And
how's his contact rate?
Oof, rough.
His dad was an NFL tight end.
Rough. It's not gone well, Jeremy. Cam Collier, on the other hand, much better.
Yeah, he's good.
Okay, let's finish out with some questions, then we'll call it a day here. A couple of interesting ones to finish out on. So Josiah on Twitter asks, any thoughts on the Twins' new coaching staff additions and changes? So here's a quick rundown if anyone missed this. So we heard a little while ago that Matt Borg-Schulte was hired as the Twins' kind of primary hitting coach back from the Orioles organization. Raiden Sierra has been promoted from Fort Myers to be a hitting coach at the major league level. He'll be the Spanish-speaking hitting coach. For folks who aren't familiar, the Twins have a Spanish-speaking hitting and pitching coach at every level of their org. Trevor Amicone was also hired as an assistant hitting coach from the Yankees organization. He started as a roving hitting coach for them, moved to the DSL, and then was their AAA hitting coach. Doing some casual online research on him, he gets pretty glowing reviews. Ramon Borrego was moved from, I think, being the manager at Wichita to being the first base infield coach. And then Hank Conger, who was the first base coach, is moving to assistant bench coach. So any of these moves intrigue you more than the others, Jeremy? Or do you not care about offseason coaching changes?
I don't really care. Like, there's nothing like. Now they have 2 bench coaches because Tingler's still there, right?
He is.
So, I mean, yeah, it doesn't really make a difference. The only thing that, and when I said it to you afterwards, was Tommy Watkins still a third base coach, and he takes the most abuse of anybody. I mean, aside from Rocco, he takes all the abuse because he runs guys into outs often. But analytically, he must have made the right decision enough that he is back for another year. I like Tommy Watkins, so yeah, good for these guys getting an opportunity if they haven't had it before, and yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, but it doesn't move the needle for me at all.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the Amicone hire. I mean, the Yankees are a good yardstick organization who are, like, they develop prospects well. They develop hitters well. He is very well thought of. I'll be interested to see how he does. I like the kind of triple hitting coach approach, just switching things up so extensively after the inconsistencies of last year. I know that the Twins offense ranked well overall, but there are stretches of extreme inconsistency. So I'm interested to see that. That will be my coaching kind of storyline to follow in the early part of the season is how is the offense looking? How consistent is the offense able to be? And how are they producing? Greg, as in that Greg. So I'm gonna tweak this question slightly to try and pin you down and put you on the spot. He says, which Twins pitching prospects will no longer be Twins pitching prospects by the end of the winter meetings? And I feel like this is a fun thought exercise. So let me pin you down even more, Jeremy. You have to include one Twins pitching prospect. I'll give you 2 at a stretch in trades for a right-handed bat, say, because Falvey named that as one of their primary areas of focus in the winter meetings. Who are you trading and what's your rationale?
I mean, I'm looking at MLB.com's list, and
you can kick it back to me if you don't want to go first.
Oh no, I will answer this question. I do not shy away from the tough questions. The last time the Twins traded a pitching prospect in the offseason for a major league contributor was Chase Petty for Sonny Gray, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was Chase Petty's thing? Like, far away from the majors, through lightning, right?
Yep.
So the Twins, that to me, like, that would be, I'm looking for the guy that most resembles Chase Petty, and that's Charlie Soto. And so that's my rationale too. Like, they've done it before. But what are the other options? Marco Raya, he's close to the majors. Andrew Morris, he's close to the majors.
Yep.
CJ Culpepper,
they're all close-ish.
But
CJ Culpepper is a great shout, actually. So I'll give you 2 different answers just to diverge from you a little bit, because I like your logic model makes a lot of sense, and you're absolutely right. Like, that is probably the best mapping onto Chase Petty, given that we haven't seen Dason Hill yet. Although I did see footage of a couple of strikeouts from down in Fort Myers in camp, and it looked awfully good, Jeremy.
You moved him all the way to the top of your list. He's not even the best left-handed pitching prospect in the
organization. So here's my first. My first is Marco Raya, and here's my rationale, right? So I would assume that they would want to, or be more okay with, trading from the group, the cluster of guys that's close to the major league level. And if you want to maximize your return, you might feel comfortable dangling someone that other organizations perceive as having more upside, and part of more upside is better stuff. And of those guys that you talk of, Morris, Corey Lewis,
Mhm.
whoever else you have at the AAA level, Raya has probably the best stuff, even though we know the questions about the durability and can he go through order the third time and all that good stuff. He's got an above average curveball, a plus slider that is in the realm. Don't give me eyebrows when I say this. It's in the realm of pre-lips slider. It's not as good, but it's in the realm. It's in the same ballpark. And so if there's an organization that's in love with Raya's breaking pitches, maybe you trade him away because they perceive him as having still some significant upside and ability to start. And then the other guy I would say is CJ Culpepper, because he's a little bit of a tweener. He just does not fit the Twins' typical profile. He has a ton of pitches and stuff, and they move all over the place. And I just don't think he has yet put it all together in terms of figuring out how to harness his stuff, how it moves, his pitch mix, all of that good stuff. So those would be my two.
Yeah, and I think if there were a trade that had pitching prospects and it was a top 20 prospect, it would really surprise me if it's anybody but those three.
Yeah, that's kind of fair. And to be honest, and I don't know how you feel about this, but like I'm like extremely comfortable with the Twins trading from their pitching depth at this point. And I'm kind of assuming that we're in a place where like we're considering Festa part of the major league team because he's shown glimpses of being extremely effective. And I'm also kind of assuming that Zebby Matthews is part of that cluster too. I know he struggled more, but like you've got like the frame, he's debuted, all of that stuff. So I'm kind of taking those two off the table. I'm comfortable moving anybody from the Twin system pitching prospect wise if it gets you what you need.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not trading pre-lip, but anybody else is fair game.
You've got your favorites. Okay, last question. Brett on X. This is a question for you, I feel like, Jeremy, because you are always a great source of knowledge with all the rules and regulations and systems. Brett on X says, would be curious to learn more about the mechanics of the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft on your next podcast. Do they have to be returned for any reason? How does a player become eligible for the minor league portion, etc.? Specifically interested in that minor league aspect, not the major league portion, which we'll cover next week.
Yep. So basically, every team has a 40-man roster. Which, if you're not on the 40-man roster, but you've run out of years exempt from the draft, you're eligible for the Rule 5 draft, the major league portion. Teams also, in addition to that, have reserve lists. They have a AAA reserve list and a AA reserve list, and that's a little more secretive. Like those reserve lists are never publicized for anybody to see. But if you're on a AAA roster, you have to be on a AAA reserve list. If you're on the AA roster, you have to be on a AA reserve list. And so guys move on to them. And then if you're not eligible, or if you are eligible for the draft and you're not on the reserve list, then you're eligible to be drafted in the minor league portion of the draft. So it's very much the same as the major league portion, only there are no stipulations to being on a roster before you have to be sent back. And I think the buying fee is like $5,000. It's very, very low. So really what it is it's a mechanism to get guys, kind of unwanted guys, an opportunity. So it's pretty common. And there's been minor league guys have been drafted in the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft that then go on and play in the major leagues. And so it's not super, like you never know who's eligible or not eligible until guys are drafted, but it's just a mechanism to give guys that are blocked / unwanted an opportunity to get picked by other organizations that will give them a chance, and they stay there forever. Like it's like almost like a free agency type deal where they're still under contract, but it gives teams an opportunity. It's kind of like the MLS does they used to do the the draft in the off season where you could just pick guys off other teams. It wasn't really an expansion draft. What they call it?
I don't know.
You're a soccer guy.
I'm not an MLS guy because it sucks.
So yeah, it's like I don't even remember what they call that draft, but it's a thing that just gives you an opportunity. The hard part is that you don't ever know who's on these reserve lists or why guys aren't or why guys on. And now I do think that there's a, with the minor league roster limits, I think that's changed a little bit. But sometimes you'll see the designation like 60-day DL or injured 60-day IL for minor leaguers versus full season IL. And I think that has to do with either the reserve list or the overall list. But really, I don't think there's anybody out there that cares so much to really find out the answers, because it's like, oh, so they have, I think it's 35 guys or 32 guys. Like,
okay.
And I don't even know, do they still do the AA portion of the draft, or is there just one minor league Rule 5?
I don't know. I'm relying on you for all the intricacies of the minor league Rule 5.
I didn't even see the minor league Rule 5 results. I know that the Twins lost. I think Theo tweeted it. One of their guys that signed with another team that then got picked. But I didn't even see if the Twins added anybody or didn't add anybody, because it's kind of it's down the list of. So he says they added someone, but
Hobie Harris, yeah. So well, that's good, Jeremy. We'll get into and cover in depth all of the Rule 5 ads, both from the Major League and the minor league portion for the Brewers, Cubs, and Twins next week. That'll be the focus of that episode, and we'll dig into all of that minutia there, with the caveat that if there is major news, breaking news, etc., we may come together to record something before that. Just to finish up with some housekeeping, really appreciate folks for continuing to send in questions and engage with the show. Ways that you can support us. Hitting like and subscribe, downloading our episodes is incredibly helpful for us in growing the show. You can find us on social media, on Twitter X at DTS_pod1, at Blue Sky, where we're getting a ton of fun interaction at the moment. That's at Destination the Show. All of our videos and episodes can be found on YouTube. The handle there is at Destination the Show. And finally, if you want to send in a question via email, you can, because we have an email address, destinationtheshow@gmail.com. Until next week, when we'll be back to do a off-season update part 2 and cover some Rule 5 comings and goings. Hope you guys enjoy the baseball, enjoy the trades, enjoy the free agent signings. We'll catch you next time.